Rise. David County Juvenile Court Judge still at Calloway-FAther.
Go, may be seated.
She just went to the restaurant.
Okay. So at some point today, we're gonna get everybody in the room together at the same time.
I do apologize, Your Honor.
Yeah, you're fine. I know Mr. Frakes told us he was gonna be late. I remember that. I think we now have everybody in the courtroom. We are back on the matter of Abigail Geiger. We have with us, this is technically day 2 of this trial. We have with us today Miss Charlena Mack, who is the guardian ad litem for the child. We have Miss Lydia Hubbell, who is the mother for the child. She is represented today by Miss Cheatham, who is with us. Also, her assistant, Mr. Brent Cheatham, is also with us today. We have Mr. Sinan Geiger, who is the father of the child, and he is represented by Mr. Brad Frakes, who is with us as well. All right, when we were here on, was it Monday? Was it this week? No, last week we were here. Yeah, the 18th. We were in the midst of cross-examination of Mr. Geiger. Ms. Cheatham was cross-examining him at that time, and that is where we will pick back up. Mr. Geiger, if you will stand and raise your right hand.
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, help you God.
I do, yes.
I don't think we'll get to you, but
Okay.
we might. We'll see. Okay.
Now, do you pronounce your name Mr. Gadar?
Get that?
Get that.
Gadar?
Okay.
All right. And Mr. Gadar, if I understand your testimony, it's pretty much the child had a pretty perfect year, the year that the mother had no contact, and before and after, when she was involved in her life, was problematic, at least from your perception. Is that about right?
I wouldn't call it perfect.
Cause
I can give you the facts. The child had perfect attendance. The year when mother had no contact with the child. I don't think she missed any days at school. She didn't get suspended.
Here.
And then was there a period in the fall of the 2016-2017 school year when the mother had no contact whatsoever?
That year, mother was having visitations. The year mother had no contact due to order of protection was.
15-16.
Yes. that
Okay,
was
so,
it.
and then we went through the spring of 2016 when there were pretty substantial problems, right?
Yeah,
And
16,
you blamed
17.
those on Miss
16, 17 was very hard for
Okay.
everybody.
And you blamed all that on Miss Hubbell as well?
Well, she was having visits and what happened, those visits were harm.
And would you agree that your child now has pretty substantial mental health needs as far as acting out at school and just about across every environment she's in?
She started this school year very good. She was getting all good colors.
Mm-hmm.
But Miss Hubbell was campaigning outside school, come to school twice with her signs. At one time, she went to child's class, hold up her
That's not the
signs.
year I'm asking you
No,
about.
this we are talking about.
No, Mr.
She-
Dilara, I'm gonna ask you just to answer my questions, it's not the year I'm talking,
Oh,
this
yes,
is not
ma'am.
the year I'm talking about. Now, I wanna ask you, okay, during the 15-16 school year, do you recall 19 tardies?
I believe she was tardy, but that was the only thing on her record. That's all.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I can show you if you need to refresh your recollection, that 19 times she was tardy, right?
Yeah, but there
Okay.
was no suspensions, no missing school. Yeah, I agree.
All right, and then you,
Is there anything on the record that shows child was suspended?
Dilara, would you direct him not to?
I'm sorry. Madam.
Ms. I promise your attorney will go back over anything that he thinks needs to be cleared up. You just answer the questions that she has for you.
And you filed and later struck a motion in September of 2016, is that correct?
There were many,
Emergency ex parte motion for restraining order. You tried to restrain Ms. Hubbell's contact in September of 16 and again in September of 17, correct?
it was filed to prevent Miss Hubbell coming to school having lunch with the, because the.
Is that yes?
Yes,
Okay.
Your Honor, I'd ask to be allowed to explain his answers.
Yeah,
But
if
he
you'll say,
explains first before he answers.
right,
He
if you'll
just
say yes or
answered.
no to the answer, then you can explain your answer after you say yes or no. So, you
yes,
can,
can I explain? What?
yes, you may.
But I didn't ask why, I just asked if he.
He can
filed it.
explain.
Okay.
I provided the school with the court order from October 15, 2015, telling them that this is the court order, mother cannot have unmonitored contact with the child. In spite of that court order, school still allowed Miss Hubbell to come have lunch with the child.
But
Then-
then, are you talking about the court order that said once she completed therapeutic visitation,
Yes.
she was to have?
Yeah, I
And
told
you
them,
understand now that that could have been interpreted to, I have completed my court-ordered therapeutic visitation and now am ready to visit.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for speculation.
I'll sustain.
Do you understand that that order did not have a conclusive, Ms. Hubbell cannot have lunch at school with Dilara?
the court order stated that Miss Hubbell needs to have the approval from the agency saying that Miss Hubbell can have unmonitored visits, but there was no approval,
Okay.
written
and-
or
and
verbal,
if
as
Miss-
far as I know.
Okay, and if Ms. Mullins is here to testify that she did tell you that Ms. Hubbell had completed the therapeutic visits and was ready to move on, and that you became quite hostile toward her once she informed you that was her position.
She never stated me that.
She never told you she had finished?
No,
Okay.
she never told me she's ready for unsupervised visit.
Let me just ask you about one sentence. The child on this, and it's, the September 2016, emergency ex parte motion. And, let me ask you one more thing about that. You not only told the school that Ms. Hubbell couldn't have lunch with her, you told the school that there were multiple restrictions on Ms. Hubbell, and you told people that everybody that your child was involved with, Centerstone, the therapeutic supervisors, the schools, that she had all these
Y'all don't
topics she
object, it's
couldn't
facts, not
discuss,
in
right?
evidence.
I'll sustain that. I think first of all, it's a very compound question.
I'll break it down,
Okay.
because it's not whether it's facts and evidence when there's an examination, it's, okay. You gave your own version of Ms. Hubbell's restriction to several parties, true?
There's an email I have written after what happened with Ms. Mullins. Ms. Mullins didn't know what was in the court order, she didn't know what she needed to
You
know.
added to that court order though, right? Your own spin about she can't discuss feelings, she can't discuss.
No such feel, that it's not on my email, I said she cannot discuss homeschooling, she cannot discuss court procedures, she cannot
And
say.
that wasn't in a court order.
Well, there was a previous court order, it said mother should encourage her child's current school arrangement.
But there was no order that said she cannot discuss homeschooling. True?
Well, I believe there was a court order prior that you may not be aware of, that was on the court
It
order.
did not
Yeah.
say, okay, then can you find me that
I
order, please?
cannot
And I'll-
find it, but it was one of.
I'll wait as long as it takes for you to find me a single order
Objection to
that's
form, Your Honor, this is not a question, this is argumentative.
argumentative, I think he's trying to say, but
I'm
I'll
gonna sustain, I
break
think
that
that's a
down.
question.
I'll break it down. Is there, can you point me to a date, because I've got every court order right here that says Ms. Hubbell is not permitted to discuss homeschooling with Dilara.
I thought it was in one, even if it wasn't in the court order, I thought it was harming the child, her bringing up the homeschooling.
So-
Child was acting out
Alright.
at school, she,
Well, it wasn't the court order, it was your version
no.
of what you
I
didn't want
thought-
discussed.
I believe there is a court order somewhere, it says mother
I've
needs
got
to be
it, sorry.
encouraging.
Please find it for me.
Miss Mack, are you aware of any?
You can't ask Ms. Mack.
Okay.
So you don't know where it is.
We have so many court orders, ma'am.
And you were asked by Ms. Regularly the last time you were here and pointed to that email that you're talking about, and you were shown there was no court order that said she could not discuss homeschooling, feelings, and this whole list of
There
things
is no
that you
such-
provided.
I didn't put anything about feelings. I didn't say anything about
You said
feelings.
homeschooling, and that wasn't in order, right?
I said mother can.
Yes or no?
Yes, homeschooling was on the, and don't play
Was
with
it in a court order?
It
That
was in
you
one of the
can't-
court orders.
Your Honor, may I give him the court orders and let him find that for me, because I really would like to see that.
You have all the court orders?
I
Fabian?
do, I have every court order.
It was in one of those court orders. It said mother should be encouraging child's current school arrangement. She,
Okay, okay, encouraging a school arrangement.
yeah.
So,
Based on my conversation with the child
I'm
started.
gonna move on, I'm done with that question now, and I wanna ask you about page 3, the September 1st, 2016, which everybody came here for, and then you struck, but you said in paragraph 12, the child has told father that he, and I'm assuming that meant she, needs to tell the judge to return the child to her mother and allow homeschooling. Did you write that? Oh, that he, I see what you're talking about. The child has told the father that he needs to tell the judge to return the child to her mother and allow homeschooling. So you're actually quoting your child talking to you about these proceedings, right?
Yeah, child started talking about homeschooling. She didn't.
Did you say I'm not supposed to talk about that with you?
Did I tell the child I'm not supposed to?
Yeah. Because that's what you're expecting, Ms. Hubbell, correct?
I mean, child keep bringing the issue up. I didn't know what else to do. I don't know what to do.
She brings it up with her too, right? With Ms. Hubbell, right?
No, Mr. Hub, ma'am.
Oh, it's always Ms. Hubbell bringing it up to her, but when it's you, it's the child
Yeah,
bringing it
but
up to
the
you.
monitor testified here.
I don't have anything else. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Mack, any questions?
No, Your Honor.
No questions? All right. Anything else, Mr. Frakes from your?
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Gunner.
Your Honor, I would ask that we call one witness out of order, and it's Ms. Judy Mullins, so she doesn't have to sit here all day.
All right,
She's
any
been here
objection?
3 times, and
I have no objection, Your Honor.
Any objection?
I'm not finished with my proof, however, I have no objection to calling this witness out of order.
Absolutely. Any objection, Ms. Mack?
No.
Okay, all right, we'll bring in Ms. Mullins.
May I step out and get my, the papers back from her as well?
Sure.
I have to call that.
I know, but I can take it.
Do what? No, we don't have a few minutes to talk about the witness.
Before you sit, let me get you sworn in.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, have to go?
Yes.
All right.
Good morning.
Good morning. We're having all kinds of problems, I apologize.
No, you're fine.
She's sworn in on it.
She was.
Ms. Mullins, state your full name and tell us what you do.
Judy Mullins, my current position is in-home care coordinator with Calloway. At the time that I was working that case as an in-home therapist.
Okay. And what was your job?
To supervise visits.
And did you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you been permitted to review your notes this morning?
Yes.
And can you tell us generally what time period you were supervising her?
It was usually in the afternoons around 4.
I mean, but like how many times?
Oh, I'm sorry. We were authorized for 8 hours a month, so we usually get 2 hours a week.
Okay. And did you do 8 hours in one month, 6 in another, and 2 at another time? Or did you get those 2 8-hour periods in
We got the 8 hours in.
2 times
Yes.
for 2 months? And tell the court how those went.
In the beginning, we had a few rough spots where Ms. Hubbell would want to talk about things of the past and wanted to talk about when things were like they used to be when Dilara was at home. And we tried to direct the conversation to where it was more appropriate to stay away from talking about either parent or anything like that. Ms. Hubbell received the feedback well. And
Let me ask one question
Okay.
about that. Did Dilara also want to bring up how things used to be?
yes,
Okay. And did she remember that positively?
no.
No, I'm talking about back, way back.
Way back,
And I'll show you what I'm talking about.
you may have to, because it's been a while, it's been almost
Would that
a year.
help?
Yes, it
Okay.
probably would, since I was working this case.
This one is, and it's been, what are your dates? July of 16. Let's look at just this one note right here.
That was a visit, and if I may put that, where we were at the library and, visit was, she was wanting to talk about the way things, go back to where they used to be, when she was living with her mother.
Dilara,
Yes, Dilara.
and she wanted that back.
That's what she was saying.
Okay, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's fine.
And so you said Ms. Hubbell received the feedback well,
She did.
and any other things stand out to you about Ms. Hubbell and Dilara's relationship or their interaction?
Their interactions were always positive. Ms. Hubbell expressed a deep love for her daughter. every time. They would always hug and kiss when they greeted each other. It was always a sad goodbye, but, it was always appropriate. I mean, I could fully say that Ms. Hubbell truly loves her daughter and wants to see the best for her. And, I didn't see that she did anything that was inappropriate during the visits. Like I said, if the conversation went to the left and I tried to steer it back, she received that feedback well.
Thank you. And you said Ms. Hubbell has a deep love for her daughter. What about her daughter for her?
I would say that she does. In my opinion, I would say Dilara loves her daughter, her mother as much as, the love is equal on both parts, let me say that.
Okay. Did you come to have some concerns about Mr. Goodar's parenting of Dilara or handling of her mental health problems?
There was an
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the relevance of this. She wasn't assigned to supervise Mr. Godar's parenting time at all.
Well, I'll lay some foundation with that.
Okay.
Did you have some contact with Mr. Goodar?
Yes, it was usually scheduled visits and when he dropped off Dilara.
Okay. And did you, at some point toward the end of these visits, 8/26/2016, have a pretty lengthy phone conversation with Mr. Goodar?
If I can remember that date,
May I refresh?
please.
Just let you look at that now.
Oh, that was the conversation when, he was concerned about Dilara and her aggressive behavior. Going back to talking about with her mother about how homeschooling, when Dilara was homeschooled, and the way things used to be. And, he was not very receptive to that conversation.
What were you trying to get across to him?
Just that, the way she would, attack people, because she actually attacked me. When I was helping him out because he went to go play soccer and drop her off at the children's playroom, I think that was the name of it. And, she didn't want to go. And, when I dropped her off, she just, started kicking and scratched and tried to bite and all my own. So, in trying to explain that conversation to him, didn't go over very well.
Okay, I mean, and when you say explain that conversation, are you talking about explain the interaction between you and Dilara?
Well, first, I just wanted to let her know that I had dropped her off, but then, what happened,
And tell the court what happened when you dropped her off.
we got to the children's playroom, like I said, I can't recall the name, I think that's the name of the place. And, she continually said that she didn't want to be there, she didn't want to go, and I was like, this is where you need to be, and, this is where your dad asked me to bring you. So,
Was that unusual? I mean, or was that something that you would typically do, is take her somewhere that the other parent asked you to take her that was not his own or him picking her up?
Usually, no, we don't transport, but we can in certain in circumstances,
Okay.
we were allowed to transport.
Okay.
And, I didn't have a problem dropping her off, like I said, but, we got there and, she was getting out of my truck and I asked her to close the door and she refused. So I was like, prompted her a few times and she still refused, so I walked over and, she had a bag in her hand that her mother had given her. So I took the bag and I was like, you'll get this back when you close the door. And that's when she just turned on me and I took pictures of where she had scratched me. And, then, finally got her inside to, this facility. And the staff there, she continued with that same behavior, kicking, screaming, the whole 9 yards. And, we finally I called Mr. Goodar and let him know that she was there and what happened. And then I think the staff from there were calling, so he had to let me go. And, then I called, I'm not sure who called who, Ms. Hubbell may have called me, I called her, and she asked what had happened. And I was, telling her that conversation, and, you know, she apologized and said that we talked about it on our next visit, which is what we did.
Was it her fault in any way? I mean, was she involved in that?
Ms. Hubbell?
Yes.
No.
Okay. Now, how did Mr. Goddard respond to you telling him that this incident had occurred? I mean, and let me ask you this, I'm sorry for
That's
that. You said you took,
Excuse me.
Bless you.
you said you took pictures of where she had scratched you. So, I mean, it was a pretty substantial attack by a child, is that what you're telling us?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so you wanted to tell each parent, is that accurate?
Yes,
So you told Ms. Hubbell.
yes,
Did you feel like her response to you was appropriate?
yes,
Did you tell Mr. Goddard?
I did.
There, did you feel his response was appropriate?
No, because his response to me was, oh, well, that's what she does when she gets upset. And I'm thinking, wow, that's totally not appropriate, but I didn't want to engage in an argument or anything, I just wanted to let him know that she was there. And according to my notes, after reading them, he was apologetic, but, it just wasn't what I expected for a parent to respond to, saying, oh, well, she does that.
Did Mr. Goddard, did you have to ask him not to curse and to listen?
I did in one of our conversations.
And did he try to blame that incident on Ms. Hubbell?
If I can recall my notes,
Let me ask you this, did he tell you some story about Ms. Hubbell asking for money or something that you had to tell him was not accurate? And I'll let you look, let me just
well,
look.
please, because like I said.
Go ahead and take your time and look at that one note, because I feel like that might be something that will refresh your memory. Okay, and let me show you what is also termed a significant clinical event report. See if that helps you as well. So, anything else you'd like to add to that, about how Mr. Goddard took the news and about this visit and how it went?
No, just that, he just tried to minimize her behavior and as if it was nothing wrong and that was okay.
Did you feel like this child may have some substantial mental health needs that were not being met?
Objection, Your Honor, calls for a medical determination.
I'll
She's not
sustain that.
qualified.
I'll
Let me
sustain
ask
it.
you this, do you routinely see children who have various levels on the spectrum of disorders and problems and problematic behavior?
I do.
Do you routinely see parents who have difficulty with parenting or things that have called the courts to the attention of the family?
I do.
And are you able to see when you feel like a parent has an appropriate response to a pretty substantial situation?
I'm not understanding that.
Do you feel you're able to gauge the appropriateness of how a parent responds to you giving them information?
Yes.
And on that continuum, did you feel like Mr. Godar was accepting, responsive, or within the realm of appropriate when talking about something that was pretty substantial that had happened on visit?
No, no.
Okay. Now, did there come a time when, let me just ask you this, did they have, and I'm talking about Ms. Hubbell and Dilara, overall, did they have good visits? Tell some of the activities and some of the things they did. I believe some of it was at the
We
library.
did a lot of the visits at the library. Ms. Hubbell and Dilara would get books off the shelves and they would read together. And Ms. Hubbell would bring her ukulele and they would sing and they would play songs. She would take her to lunch. And that's the nature of majority of our visits. I mean, they always had, Ms. Hubbell always had an activity plan to do something. They weren't just sitting there just kind of trying to fish around for a conversation. She always had an activity for her to do. They were always doing something.
And did Dilara impress you as a fairly bright child?
Yes.
Write it down.
Okay.
No, write it down.
Did there come a time when, and let me ask you this, did, there come a time when you, had just, or spoke with Mr. Godar about where you felt like, and I'm talking about at the end, after 8 visits had occurred, when you gave information to Mr. Godar about where you felt like Ms. Hubbell was in visits?
Yes.
And tell us about that.
I think I had mentioned to him that I felt that it would be an appropriate time to move forward to have unsupervised visits for Ms. Hubbell and Dilara.
Did you have any concerns at the time you had that conversation with him about Ms. Hubbell's ability to parent?
No.
And how did he react to that news, if that's where you felt like she was?
He was not very receptive to that.
What did he say?
I can't remember.
How did he act toward you, as the reporter of that
I think
news?
that was at the time that he had called my supervisor, notified my supervisor that he no longer wanted me working with this case, that he wanted someone else.
Okay. And would you describe that as him turning on you?
That's the way I would describe it, but,
Okay.
because, in the beginning, I felt like, scheduling visits, we made that connection and we were able to do that, but after I informed him of that, that's when things went kind of south.
And did Ms. Hubbell also receive the information from you that you felt like she had done everything that you were directed to do as far as her having so much time with their kids?
Your Honor, I'm gonna object to the leading.
I'll sustain.
What did you feel like Ms. Hubbell's response was? What information did you provide Ms. Hubbell about where you were at the conclusion of 8 weeks of visitation? What did you tell her? Your professional opinion was about where she was at the end of those 8 weeks?
That I was, recommending to DCS that, she may be ready for unsupervised.
Okay, maybe, or was ready?
I would say she was ready, but I can't remember the exact wording that I said, but I let her know that I was supportive in her having unsupervised visits.
Okay. And was Dilara by then saying anything about wanting to be home with her mom, things being back to the way they were, those kinds of things? Did she express that in front of you
She did,
on several occasions?
several occasions.
I don't have anything further.
All right, cross-examination, Mr. Frakes?
Yes, Your Honor. Is your name Miss Mullins, Judith Mullins, correct?
Yes,
How long had you been with Camelot at the time that you were supervising these visits for Ms. Hubbell?
oh, goodness. I'm not sure, maybe 6 months, I'm not sure.
Okay, so were you somewhat new to the position?
Yes,
And who was your supervisor?
but Latasha Stevens.
And what was your specific role called at that time?
In home care.
What type of training do you have as a therapist?
That was just the job title.
Okay, but you don't have any certifications, degrees, anything of that nature in regards to therapy, counseling?
I have a bachelor, you want me to go through the,
As far as therapy is related, yes, ma'am.
not specifically for therapy, but I do have a BS degree in psychology.
Okay. Did you have authority from Camelot to make a determination as to when supervised visitation should end?
I'm not sure if you would say authority, but I think that, they would expect us to make a recommendation.
Who did you make the recommendation? Who were you to make a recommendation to?
It would probably be the DCS worker.
You did not have to go through your supervisor, Ms. Stevenson?
I mean, we had supervision, I would say something to her on those lines, but, I mean, as far as going to make the recommendation, she would leave that up to us to make that determination and move forward.
How many other recommendations to move forward had you made to DCS at this time?
I can't recall. I'm sure I made several, but, I can't recall how many cases I had at the time.
What are you referring to as rough spots beginning the mother's visitation?
Just that, I think it was them seeing each other and not having seen each other in a while and just, having conversations that were appropriate as far as not talking about, either parent and, just having a nice visit.
What did she discuss that you would consider a rough spot with the child?
Objection, that misstates the evidence. She didn't say the discussion made it the rough spot. She just said she corrected her there.
I'm gonna overrule that. I think she did say part of some of the discussions that, I'm gonna overrule. You need to repeat the question?
Please.
What discussions did the mother have with the child that you would consider a rough spot? What topics was she discussing?
I think, in the beginning, maybe, homeschooling and, her dad and trying to steer her away from those conversations. And, I just wanted them to have a good time on their visit and spend time with each other and not focus on anything negative.
Do your notes reflect what she said about her dad?
I'd have to look at them. Like I said, this is the old case.
If you look at the notes, please, that you were presented.
I don't have them.
You have the notes, Ms. Cheatham?
Yes, but haven't entered them into evidence.
If you'll have her look at the
And
notes again.
I don't have the part that he's asking for. I think it's up to him to
I'd ask that
refresh
she
her.
be presented with the notes that she was previously presented with to refresh her
If you'll
memory.
have, show her the notes that you showed her before.
Here's the two I showed you. I showed you that one.
You'll look through the entire packet, ma'am, and find the rough spots.
Your
that
Honor,
you're
it's up
discussing.
to him to refresh her recollection. It's not my job. I showed her 2 notes and I showed her the 2.
I'll allow her to look at the entire pack of the notes. Refresh her memory.
What's your question again, please?
What topics was she discussing about the father?
I think that's asked and answered.
And she did answer that, so I'll sustain that. unless
She
there-
did not answer it, Your Honor. That's why she asked to refresh her memory with the notes.
I think in the beginning that, Ms. Hubbell was saying that Mr. Goodyear, according to my notes, was a liar and that she hadn't seen Abigail Dilara in over a year.
I'm sorry, she said what?
That Mr. Goodyear was a liar and that she hadn't seen Abigail, and I referred to her as Abigail in my notes instead of Dilara, in over a year.
May I see? I just want to be sure. Is that talking to the client?
That is at the visit.
So,
Wait a minute.
Your Honor, is that objection to something? I'm trying to,
Your Honor,
Not sure.
if we working with the witness?
Yeah, Ms. Cheatham, if you'll just let her.
I
ask
just
the
want to be
question.
sure she's looking at what
She wants
she
to
thinks
instruct the
she's
witness
looking
is
at.
what
And
she's
Your
doing.
Honor, it was his job to get the
If
notes.
she
If
can
he
look
wanted
at
to
the notes,
refresh her.
you have a right to redirect her after he finishes. Miss,
And I think she needs to
Mullins,
take
if
her
you'll-
time too.
if you'll just answer the question that he asked you.
Yes, ma'am, if he can repeat it.
what topics was the mother discussing about the father with the child? What do your notes reflect?
Just that he was a liar and.
Now, do your notes reflect that the mother told the child the father was a liar?
If I may read my note, I can.
Yeah,
Please
go ahead
do.
and take your time, read the note.
And I'm gonna ask that she not read the note into evidence. It's not admitted.
She's
It's
taking her
used
time to
strictly
read the
to
note
refresh.
now.
Your Honor,
Keep refreshing her
respectfully,
memory.
the Camelot notes were entered in as an exhibit, and on Monday, Ms. Cheatham requested that all of the exhibits that were originally entered be entered in an exhibit. So
that
those
was
are
one
a
of
part
the
of the
original.
exhibits today, Your Honor, as well. So
Not
that-
the ones that I have that are marked up.
Well, those are the Camelot notes that Tracy Rose entered in.
Gotcha.
The note- all
If
of
you
her
wanna
notes
get
are
those,
already-
you can, but the ones I have are highlighted.
Yeah,
That's fine. Just read what you got. Take your time, Ms. Mullins. When you have finished refreshing your memory, Mr. Frakes will re-ask your question. Thank you, Ms. Cheatham.
And
thank
Your
you,
Honor,
Ms. Mack.
there's also too, the asked and answered, she said that was part of those rough spots. She redirected, she accepted the redirection well, and from there, the visits went well. So this whole line is just a
I'll
repeat
overrule
of
that
what I
objection.
asked.
Thank you. I'll overrule the objection.
Okay. Could we take like a 5 minute and let her really look at those in depth? Cause I did provide them to her right before, but we called her.
I'll just
quicker.
sit quietly. She
Okay.
can look at them.
And can I take up a housekeeping thing that
Well,
doesn't
let's
include her?
sit quietly and let her look at
Okay.
that, and then we'll get to the next one.
What topics about the father did the mother discuss with the child that you would consider inappropriate?
It's just that,
oh, scared me.
Ms. Hubbell had, asked Dilara about, Mr. Goodyear and stated that he was a liar and that, she was just trying to, do what she needed to do to get her back home with her.
Do your notes reflect that Ms. Hubbell informed the child that the father was a liar?
Okay, asked and answered, and could we get a date, a context for that, please?
Do your notes reflect that? And if so, what date, what order, or what visitation was this? Was this the first visitation or the second?
Quit yelling at her, just give her a minute.
Your Honor,
Yeah, Ms. Cheatham, if you watch your comments for it, said just leave this objection.
Objection.
Uh,
Yelling at her.
the first visit,
The first visit.
yes.
Were there any other inappropriate comments or discussions with the mother after the first visit?
I think we had one on the second visit
What happened on the second visit, ma'am?
that, before she even got started, we, raised the conversation to be positive and not to engage in any talk about Dilara or to Miss I'm sorry.
You're fine.
About Mr. Goodyear to Dilara. And we wanted to keep everything just positive, and it was, the visit was about them and not everything else that was going on.
Did anything occur on the second visit outside of those limitations?
No, she received the feedback and, they had a good visit. They were reading and interacting.
Where did those visits occur at, ma'am?
We did a lot of the visits at the mall, Green Hills Library, excuse me. That's the majority of where we did the visits at.
And what was your proximity to the mother and the child during the visitation?
We were in the same vicinity. I was always in earshot. I tried to give him space, but making sure that I was within reach if I needed to, interact.
Could you hear the conversation between the mother and child at all times?
Yes,
You stated that the mother took the child to lunch.
I was there.
Where?
I want to say the middle part.
Excuse me, ma'am, I could not hear you.
I want to say it's the middle part.
You can wait and answer out loud. I can hear you. I can barely hear you as well.
I'm just trying to figure out.
Yeah, take your time. Look at it first before you answer.
I know it's in here where he took her, but I don't see it right now. I'm sorry, noodles are coming.
Okay, and where was the visitation at that day?
We started out at the Green Hills Mall and then walked over to Noodles and Company.
And did you sit with them at the lunch?
Yes.
Asked and answered. She's,
Yeah,
Your Honor, I guess my objection is that she said she was within earshot on every single visit, and now we're
That's
going to
not,
pick through.
that's a
and
different
ask-
question, so I'm gonna,
Okay.
that is a different question.
He wants to.
Did you ever inform your supervisor that you believe the mother was prepared to go towards unsupervised visits?
I don't don't know, I can't recall that conversation, but, like I said, we had supervision, so I'm sure that came up somewhere in our supervision.
What did, I'm sorry. What came up?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to
Yeah,
opposing counsel
you have
question the
to-
witness on cross-examination.
I couldn't hear. I just didn't hear
Just
what
repeat
you
what you said
said.
again.
I said, I can't recall the exact conversation, but during supervision, I'm sure we did discuss it.
Discuss what, though? I didn't hear the.
So the original question was, did you tell your,
Did you ever inform your supervisor, Ms. Stevenson, that the mother was prepared to go forward with unsupervised
Okay,
visitation?
gotcha. I'm sorry. That just kind of drug out and I didn't get it.
You need me to repeat the question, ma'am?
No, I thought I just answered it. I was like- Because, like I said, I don't recall that conversation, but during supervision, I'm sure it took place.
During supervision being a discussion between you and your supervisor?
Yes,
And would that have been the formal process to move the mother towards unsupervised visitation?
that would have to go through DCS. I would just notify my supervisor if I felt that she was ready to make that step so we could notify DCS and they would have to make that recommendation.
Who would notify DCS at that time, yourself or your supervisor?
Probably myself.
Did you ever do so?
I didn't get an opportunity to.
Why did you not get an opportunity to do so?
Because I was removed from the case, and anytime you're removed from the case, then it goes to the other person or the next worker.
Who removed you from the case?
My supervisor was requested by,
Who removed you from the case is the question now.
She's answering, Your Honor, if you could
that's not
finish.
that
Let her-
question.
my supervisor took me off the case at the request of Mr. Judy.
What reasoning did your supervisor provide you?
That he no longer wanted me to work with his family and asked me to be removed.
At that time, did you tell your supervisor that you thought it was proper for the mother to go forward with unsupervised visitations?
Asked and answered. She said she did.
That's a different question, all overruled.
Like I said, I'm sure I did, I don't recall that conversation as to whether or not at that time I told my supervisor.
Did you take phone calls during the visitations?
There were times when I did receive phone calls.
While you were supervising Ms. Hubbell's visitations, correct?
My job is you have to multitask.
I understand, I'm just asking a question. Did you receive phone calls while you were supervising Ms. Hubbell's visitation?
Yes,
And while you were receiving these phone calls, could you still overhear everything that was going on between the mother and the child?
not everything. I had to take, I took a phone call, but I'm still watching the interaction between them.
But you weren't always within earshot or able to overhear the conversations then, were you?
I wouldn't say that I was within earshot. I'm sure I was, but my attention was turned to the phone call.
So there were periods of time that you were not paying attention to the supervision of the mother and the child during the visit, correct?
Correct.
Regarding the event you discussed where Dilara attacked you, did that occur directly after one of the mother's visits?
Yes,
Did you receive a phone call that day?
I don't recall.
Could there have been a period of time during that visitation that you did not overhear everything between the mother and the child?
Not that I can recall.
Is it reasonable to believe that the mother may have upset the child somehow, the child acted out that day?
She was upset when her father had asked me to take her to the children's playroom. That she said that she didn't want to go when he was there. So that occurred prior to the actual visit.
That occurred prior to the visit with the mother?
Yes, because he had asked me while Dilara was there, before the visit even took place, he was making arrangements for me to drop her off after the visit concluded.
Well, what did she do to act out at that time?
She was fine during the visit.
Okay, but you told her about this prior to the visit occurring?
Told Dilara,
Yes, ma'am.
she was there with her dad when he asked me to transport her.
And was she upset at that time?
She says that she did not want to go,
Did she kick you?
not at that time.
Did she attack you in any manner?
She did after, when I was dropping her off,
But that was after the visit with the mother, correct?
yes.
Is it not reasonable to believe that something may have occurred during the mother's visit?
Your
that
Honor,
caused her
I'm
to
gonna
act out?
ask him not to ask this witness for a conclusion that
It's an-
she's not qualified to make on causation.
It's
We
an
actually
opinion, Your
have.
Honor.
I'm not overrule that objection.
Is it reasonable to believe that something may have occurred during the mother's visitation that caused the child to act out in this manner?
Not that I saw.
Were you familiar with the court's order at the time you were doing the supervised visitations?
Court orders for,
As to the parameters of supervision, the length and times, did you have a copy of the court's order?
it may have been one in her file, but I don't recall seeing one. All I was given for my supervisor was the authorization from BCS for 8-hour supervision.
But you had no knowledge of any parameters of the supervision that you were to comply with, or that Ms. Hubbell was to comply with?
Not that I can recall.
Did anyone tell you that Ms. Hubbell shouldn't discuss court litigation with the child?
Not that I can recall.
Do you recall any instances of the mother discussing court litigation with the child?
All I can recall is that she's saying that she wished things were back the way they were used to be, and that when she was living at home with her, and that when she was homeschooled.
And did all of those events occur on the first visit?
Maybe the first 2 or 3 visits, those conversations occurred, and then after that, we didn't have any comments towards that. Talking about the way things used to be.
And those occurred, those conversations on the first, second, and third visit?
Yes.
So 3 out of 8 visits, she had inappropriate conversations with the child.
Yes.
Do you recall if Mr. Gadir ever offered to provide you with a copy of the court order?
I do not.
Do you recall if Mr. Gadir ever asked for your email address?
I don't already.
Do you have knowledge of what your email address was at the time of this event?
Object to the relevance.
What's the relevance?
I'll rephrase the question, Your Honor. Did you ever tell Mr. Gadir that you didn't know what your email address was?
That could have been possible, because I couldn't tell you now. I'd have to get you a card.
Did Mr. Gadir ever give you a paper copy of the court order to make sure that you knew the parameters?
I don't recall.
Is that something that you would have taken in your notes?
If he had given it to me, I'm sure it would be in my notes, but I don't recall reading it.
Did you look at your notes for the last visit, see if it's in the notes?
And could we get a date on this order that he's just, that relates to this question?
Is there any reference to that in your notes, ma'am?
No, I don't see anything.
Could we get a date for the order?
But I guess if there's no reference, there's no need for the date. She didn't have it, so she can't answer that.
I would like to know what the basis of the foundation of the question is. Is it the one?
I'm gonna overrule the objection. I think she already answered and she doesn't know.
You
So we'll move on to the
maintained your
next question.
employment with Camelot after you were removed from this case, correct, Ms. Mullins?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I missed that question.
You maintained your employment with Camelot after you were removed from this case, correct?
yes,
And you went to a different position, correct?
yes.
Have you had the opportunity to discuss this matter with Ms. Stevenson at any time after you were removed from the case?
No,
Do you have any knowledge of whether or not Camelot is continuing to supervise visitations with Ms. Hubbell?
Camelot ended the contract with DCS in June, so probably not.
Okay, do you know why the contract was ended?
I guess DCS made better, I'm sorry, they lost out to Omnivision. So the contract ended in June.
You believe the contract ended and Camelot did not terminate services?
Services altogether or services in this case?
Services for that case.
Oh, it went to another coworker.
Or-
Your Honor, I'm gonna object to her, because the lack of personal knowledge as to where Camelot is going at this point. She just testified, asked and answered that she didn't really know.
I think some of that other stuff I would object to. I think this one, she does know the answer. She would have personal knowledge on that one, so I'll overrule that objection.
Through your employment with Camelot, do you have any personal knowledge that the police were called to the last visitation period Camelot supervised? with
And
Ms.
that
Hubbell?
objection, that would call for hearsay if she wasn't there.
As
He
to
asked
her
for her
personal
personal knowledge.
knowledge.
She can answer that or
Okay.
not. If she does, she does. If she doesn't, she doesn't.
She was there.
Do you have any personal knowledge of the police being called to the last visit Camelot supervised with Ms. Hubbell?
Yes, I was told by,
Objection.
All right, I'll sustain that.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, Ms.
Your Honor, if I could please see the exhibits that were 1 through 11.
Do I have those? Is this what I've got over here?
But you enter into exhibits that they want to try.
This. I'm not talking about what they are, I'm just asking if that's this.
8, 9.
Exhibit, it says exhibits, 1 through 11. Oh. It's got Camelot Preservation Services, case notes, summary.
You look for all of them, or just the
I just need to glance through them. This is just.
You heard me.
Yes.
You look for the Camelot case, not you know what you're looking for.
And that's okay, just know it's got a copy, I can just roll. I just didn't want there to be any issue with me having them.
You got it.
Thank you so much.
Got something in here.
I'm sorry, let me grab them. Ms. Mullins, good morning to you. Good morning. I'm Sherman Mack, guardian ad litem for the Margadere. Ms. Mullins, before I go into the actual notes, I want to go to you with the things that you may remember. Prior to working for Camelot, where were you employed? Well, I'm sorry. Prior to coming to work for Camelot, isn't it true that you were a DCS employee?
yes,
And what was your capacity at DCS?
I was a family service worker.
As a family service worker. And isn't it true that this case actually had a family service worker that provided the referral to you for these therapeutic visitation services, correct?
That I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you communicate communicate with Nicole Williams from the Department of Children's Services on a regular basis as to progress in regards to therapeutic visitations?
Yes.
Okay. In communications with Nicole Williams, at any point, did Nicole Williams specifically tell you the specifics of what supervision was supposed to look like?
Not that I can.
Not that you can recall. And based upon your knowledge, information, and belief, from what you recall, all you received from the Department of Children's Services was the referral for therapeutic visitations, correct?
Correct.
It did not give you any restrictions on visitations, correct?
Correct.
And it did not attach the juvenile court order, correct?
Correct.
Isn't it also true that you never communicated in regards to a CFTM where Mr. Gadare or the mother ever had a meeting with the Department of Children's Services in regards to visitations in this case, correct?
Object to relevance, why would her knowledge of a CFTM, what would that, relevance?
Respectfully, Your Honor, the relevance would be this was a part, she testified that this was a part of a DCS referral for services. And it's clear that that would have been an open case, Your Honor. And typically that, and Ms. Mullins can testify on her own behalf, just based on her history of being an FSS employee, you have CFTMs in regards to these kinds of cases. Isn't that true, Ms. Mullins?
Never had a supervisor there at one.
I didn't ask about a supervisor, Your Honor. I asked her.
Visitation supervisor coming to a CFTM, a relevance.
I'll overrule the objection.
Thank you. Ms. Mullins, isn't it true that you never had a sit-down meeting with Mr. Gadare, Ms. Hubbell, and Nicole Williams, or this guardian ad litem at any point on this case?
Not that I know.
So all you were operating on was that referral, right?
Right.
And isn't it true that it wasn't until you had the communication with Mr. Gadare of saying, hold up, something's wrong, that you were put on notice that there was an order that had restrictions, correct?
Correct.
And did you ever have the opportunity to review that
Your
order?
Honor, object, I've got a right to know what order these questions keep referencing.
The October 2015 court order.
October of 2015. May I have just a moment, I think I've got all the orders, may I pull that order out?
Why, sure.
You know, I don't know if that's an objection. We gave the October.
I mean, if it
I'm
references
giving
an
you-
order,
look at
I
the
should
order.
have the
You already
opportunity to
threw her
review.
objection.
What? If I could have just a moment, because I really would think that would be good. All right, thank you.
Ms. Mullins, and how long were you with the Department of Children's Services before you left?
3 years, I think.
3 years. In your 3 years of operating as an FSS worker, would it be normal practice for the Department of Children's Services to have meetings with the family and when there's an open FSS case?
Yes.
And you testified earlier that you never had that on this case, correct?
No.
In fact, you also testified that Nicole Williams, who was the current FSS worker at the time, never communicated with you about any restrictions, did she?
No.
So you were blind on this, weren't you?
I just went on what we heard.
You just went on what was told to you?
Object, let her finish, I didn't hear the
She
complete
finished.
answer.
I think she was restating it.
She was.
I thought she'd finished.
I thought you were too.
That's all right.
And Ms. Mullins, if I go a little bit too fast for you, could you please just tell me to slow down?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Ms. Mullins, in your history of an FSS worker, FSW, I'm sorry, in your history of being an FSW, isn't it normal practice that you would have provided what the restrictions would have been for those therapeutic visitations to protect the child and the family from any issues, correct?
Correct.
And in this case, you testified earlier, you never received that.
No.
So you had no idea
Right.
until Mr. Gadare put you on notice.
Right.
Now, let's go back to your notes. Permission to approach the witness?
You may.
Ms. Mullins, you said there were 8 visits that you supervised, correct?
Yes.
And isn't it true that prior to you supervising the visits, there was someone else that actually supervised some visits before you got involved, correct?
Correct.
And do you recall what the reason was that that person stopped supervising?
My coworker told me that, he was asked to be replaced.
Okay. And with that, did your coworker at that time tell you that?
Objection.
Did your coworker provide to you any recommendations for supervision for the mother?
Objection, calls for hearsay.
I think you can answer that without saying any hearsay.
No,
You didn't receive any recommendations for completing therapeutic visitations?
no.
And in your therapeutic visitation notes, I'm gonna have you to go through, you said these are accurately reflecting your visitations, correct?
Yes.
And if you go through July 2016, that's page 1 of Ms. Mullins' notes, correct?
Yes.
And at any point in July 2016, did you recommend visits are going well, you don't see a need for any therapeutic visitations? Did you ever make that recommendation?
Not in July, because we had.
Okay, I'm in July right now.
Okay, in July, we had just met.
You just met, I'm guiding you along, Ms. Mullins, hold tight.
Okay.
All right, now, we're in July, let's go on over it. So you testified earlier that the first 3 visitations, there was some inappropriate communication, right? So let's go, we've got the whole month of July, we're here now. Do you see anywhere where you recommend that there's no longer a need for therapeutic visitations? Page 3. Page 3.
Not at this point.
Okay, let's go to page 4 of your therapeutic observation notes. At any point in July 21st or July 28th, did you recommend there's no longer a need for therapeutic visitation?
No, nothing in here.
Okay,
Well, may I ask, if that's something that she would typically even put in a note that's about visitation?
You can definitely ask it on redirect, but during her cross-examination, she can ask those questions.
now, let me start with going back to where we were. We're on page 4, right? And this is July 21st and 28th.
Okay.
You, and I'm gonna, let me pause right there. The goal of your, you have here in a bracket here, reunification. That was the goal, right?
Yes,
And that was all that you were told to work on at that point, correct?
correct.
Okay. So, is it normal practice, even when you were with the department, when there's a goal of reunification, there's some kind of recommendation?
Yes.
Okay, so July 28th, you don't make that recommendation yet, do you?
No.
Now, let's look on page 5 where you said here, what's number, the monthly review? You said develop what?
Develop and work on consistent parenting skills for Ms. Hubbell.
Okay. And then your clinical observation?
To assist Ms. Hubbell to develop appropriate boundaries and parenting skills, i.e. appropriate conversations.
So you were on notice in July of 2016 that she had to be appropriate with her communication, correct?
Correct.
And you were on notice that we were working on reunification,
Yes.
and you were on notice that we need to work on appropriate and consistent parenting skills.
Yes.
Okay. Now we go to August. Wait, stop, strike that. We're in July, we finish out the month of July. There's no recommendation on next page, on page 6, or anything that says mother has achieved to work on consistent parenting skills, working on appropriate boundaries, etc. You have no recommendation in these notes at this point, correct?
Correct.
So we go into the month of August. Is that still the same goal that you're working on as you recall? Would that have changed in any way?
Reunification?
Reunification, parenting skills, appropriate communication, that wouldn't have changed.
No.
And also in this, in the month of July, based upon your observations and visitations, you didn't make any new recommendations, did you?
No.
That's not reflected anywhere in your notes?
No.
Okay. And then we go into August, okay? So we have August 1st.
Again, my objection is lacking in foundation. I think has to be a foundation laid that recommendation would show up in visitation notes. She testified earlier, she had communicated that. So if
I'm
there's
gonna
no,
overrule the objection. I think she can ask those them questions. If there's, you can go back and redirect
All right,
on that
thank you.
issue.
Ms. Mullins, I'm gonna pause for a minute. I'm gonna back up over here a little bit. Ms. Mullins, when a parent is doing extremely well or a child is doing extremely well and there's not a need for any further services, would you make that recommendation?
Yes.
Would you strongly communicate with your supervisor, whether you were working with DCS or with Camelot, strongly go to your supervisors and advocate for the ending of those therapeutic visitations?
Yes.
Did you do that in this case?
I don't recall going to my supervisor and having that conversation. Like I said, it may have been in supervision, but that was.
Okay. Yeah, I understand. Now, so we're looking at, you started in August. Now we go in August. At any point in August, do you make that recommendation in your notes? Because you're pretty detailed with your visits, right?
Yes, I tried it.
Right. So, and if you could look over page 2, the August notes, and page 3, and page 4, and 5, and 6, and 7, 8, anywhere do you say in your notes that she achieved the goal that you had set for her? At any point in the whole month of August, did you ever recommend or state that the mother had achieved her goal for therapeutic visitations?
I didn't say that she achieved.
In those notes, do you?
No.
object to not letting her finish.
My question was, in the notes in pages 1 through 9, did she ever document that the mother had achieved her goals of appropriate parenting skills, appropriate communication, or reunification?
And that lacks foundation, those goals are not in evidence.
She asked her-
Reunification is the only goal that's in evidence.
I'm gonna overrule the objection. She asked her that question earlier. That's what she said. All right, go ahead, Ms. Mullins, you can answer that question.
That was a conversation that,
You can, if you just answer yes or no, then you can explain your answer.
Is it in page 1 through 9 of these notes? Yes or no?
no.
And then you can explain your answer.
Go ahead, Ms. Mullins.
According to my notes, Ms. Hubbell wanted to, I directed her that was a conversation she may need to have with DCS.
Correct.
And That was my direction for her.
And is that normal practice to when the Department of Children's Services is involved? And there's a court proceeding that's involved, that you would direct to the Department of Children's Services for guidance?
Yes.
Is it also normal practice that whenever there's a court order, no one can change that court order without the court doing so?
Right.
At any point, did you discuss with Ms. Hubbell of her ability to go back to court or file a motion to change the visitation at that point?
Objection, that would offer somebody with legal training, that's not within the
Not-
purview of a supervisor.
I'm gonna, overrule that objection. She can answer whether she did that or not.
Directed her to go file a motion, is that the question?
I'm gonna overrule the objection. If you want to repeat your question again, you can.
Did you ever have any communications or conversations with Ms. Hubbell that you can recall about her needing to file a motion if she has any issues with the court order or visitation going forward?
Not along that type of conversation, but I would I always refer back to DCS.
Right, so that's the save all, isn't it?
Yes.
Go to DCS, because DCS is the one who's paying me, right?
Right.
Right, okay. So nowhere in your notes do you recommend that? You've read the notes, and there's no, you testified that you didn't really consult with your supervisor that, hey, she's did what she needs to do in regards to therapeutic visitations. I don't think she needs this anymore. You never verbally make that recommendation, correct?
Not that I don't know.
Okay. And up until today, outside of in court or anyplace else, have you ever communicated with Leanne Clark and she said, hey, Ms. Hubbell doesn't need therapeutic visitations anymore?
No,
Her visitations are appropriate.
no.
And let me ask you something about supervision of visitations, okay? In your supervision of visitations, you testified that, you have to multitask.
Yes.
But you just read, and I will come back to you with that. Oh, my apologies, Your Honor, I just dropped some stuff. So if y'all hear me splitting on the record. You just testified that the goal was reunification
Yes.
and to observe appropriate parenting skills,
Yes.
okay? And appropriate conversations with her daughter.
Yes.
And yet you testified that sometimes you have to multitask with taking phone calls.
Yes.
How can you accurately do that if you're multitasking? And just be honest, because again, that's what we're here for. We want to understand.
I'm not sure I know how to answer that. It's just that, you try to lean one way and listen the other way, and you just try to get it all in because everybody's pulling it 5 different directions.
5 different directions. And it's hard to catch everything, isn't
It
it?
is.
So you cannot safely say that you caught everything. That
Your
Ms.
Honor,
Hubbell-
this whole line was asked and answered by Mr. Frakes. It's just a rerun.
She has a right
Already
to-
asked and answered.
She has a right to answer, do her own cross-examination. Go ahead.
Ms. Mullins,
Yes.
as honestly as I know how, it is difficult to listen to everything when you're doing more than one thing at a time, correct?
Yes.
So is it safe to say you might have missed something during a supervised visitation by taking calls or doing other things while you were supposed to be supervising her visitations?
Yes, it's possible.
So when you testified earlier that nothing went wrong with the visitation where Dilara decides to kick you, you really don't know what all was said to Dilara, do you? You didn't have eyes on her and her mother during that entire visit, did you?
No, when I took the call, I didn't step away. I would place myself to where I was still watching it.
You were watching, but you couldn't hear.
Not the entire conversation.
Not the entire conversation. So, you like Ms. Hubbell, don't you?
I don't dislike her.
Right. But you've never had the interactions with Mr. Dare that you had with Ms. Hubbell because you supervised her visits, correct?
Right.
So you talked to her a little bit more than you talked to him, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that his response to you telling him about Dilara kicking you, you felt was not appropriate.
Yes.
You felt like he had kind of nonchalantly brushed you off about that, isn't that correct?
Yes.
Had you ever talked to him anything about Dilara's behavior before that day?
I don't remember, I have to pick this in.
You want to look in your notes?
Is there a paper towel close by, Jeff?
I don't have any, have you picked up
Tissue,
on
maybe?
that?
Water on it.
My question was, did you have, before the day Dilara kicked you, did you have any communications about Mr. Gadare, with Mr. Gadare about Dilara's behaviors?
I would give him a report as to how the visits went.
When would you give him those reports? Just verbally, or would you get a copy of the therapeutic visitation notes immediately after?
He wouldn't get a copy of the notes, just verbally or via text.
Okay. And at any point, even in your own notes, did you ever make a notation, Dilara's behaviors were of a concern for you? And that you would address that with Mr. Gadare?
Not that I've seen.
Did you ever address the concerns for Dilara's behavior with her mother?
Yes.
And what was the result of that?
She would talk with Dilara about her behavior.
Okay. Would she talk to Dilara about her behavior during the therapeutic visitations?
Yes.
Okay. And you were satisfied with that?
Yes.
Okay. But Mr. Gadare, his response concerned you.
Yes.
And did you note that in the notes?
That's not in my notes.
Isn't it also true that when you provide therapeutic visitations, strike that. What is therapeutic visitations?
Often wondered that myself.
I'll say that again, please, ma'am.
I said I often wondered that myself. It is where they had a provider to come in and sit with the family, well, whoever was authorized for the visit, to monitor their interactions and conversations.
To monitor their interactions and conversations. Why?
I guess DCS had a reason for that to take place. That's how we got the report.
But why do they call it therapeutic visitation?
That I don't know.
You don't know that even though you work for Calloway? Okay. So let me ask you this. Is it normal practice that whenever a therapeutic observation is taking place by a provider, agency provider, and you have concerns with a child's behavior or mental health, anything like that, do you not communicate with the Department of Children's Services about that?
Yes.
And even with that, would you not also make a recommendation in your therapeutic observation notes that the child may need some additional supports or services?
Yes.
Did you make that observation in there?
No, that's not in my notes. I'll communicate with you.
So when you're talking to Mr. Gadare, who you've never had this conversation with before, you just assume that he was nonchalant with it.
Objection, Your Honor, that misstates the facts. Said she didn't recall having conversations, and that it had been a year ago.
I'm gonna overrule the
She's
objection.
rephrased and
I'm gonna overrule. You can answer that question.
So you testified in your notes, you reviewed them again, several times now. You never had this conversation before with Mr. Gadare about Dilara's behavior before this day that Dilara kicks you. So So you wouldn't have any reason to assume or any personal knowledge to know what his response was like, other than what? Just based upon you didn't like it?
I think I'm confused.
Did you have any background information on Mr. Gadara? You don't know him, you've never supervised his visits, correct?
Correct.
And yet you assumed, that was your statement, because was it a fact that Mr. Gadara was not concerned about what Dilara had done to you? Or was that your opinion?
I guess it was my opinion.
Okay, in your opinion, so that's an assumption, correct?
Yes.
So in your assuming, you had never communicated with this man about any behavioral concerns regarding his daughter,
Correct.
but you communicated with the mother,
Yes.
and yet you just didn't like his response.
I just didn't think that it was appropriate, because if someone had told me that my child had physically attacked someone, I think my response would have been a little bit different.
Yet in your notes, you note that she kicked you, right?
And scratched me, yes.
But yet you don't make any recommendations for what the father or the mother should do to help the child, correct?
Correct.
You don't notify DCS of any concerns or any supports that she may need to help her with her behaviors, do you?
If I notified DCS, I just didn't document at that time. But
Oh, so it's safe to say that you don't document everything in these notes that you do?
I didn't at that time. She got a phone call,
She got a phone call.
Ms. Williams.
Ms. Williams got a phone call.
Yes.
And what happened as a result of that?
I don't recall how that conversation went.
Okay. Can you tell the court the date of that visit that Dilara kicked you again? And let you look?
We pretty much beat this one visit to death, because we just, irrelevance at this point. And
No,
asked
over
and
the road, she's
answered.
gotta ask, she's got a right to do her own cross-examination.
August 26th, last year.
August 26th of 2016?
Yes.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, that's not right. It's the date. I'm sorry, go back far enough. It was August 20th.
August 20th of 2016. Now let's go to after that day. Ms. Mullins, when did you become aware that the mother has gone to the school to have unsupervised contact, lunch with the child?
I don't think I was on that case.
So if you came to understand that Ms. Hubbell would tell everyone that you gave her permission to go to the school and have lunch with her daughter, would that be accurate?
Objection, sends a fact, not an evidence.
I'm gonna overrule the objection, she can answer the question.
Your Honor, and another thing is, this is clearly a hypothetical. She said she doesn't have any knowledge of that situation. She's asking her to assume that happened. She's not here as an expert. Hypotheticals are inappropriate.
I'm gonna overrule the objection.
Did you give Ms. Hubbell authorization or permission to go to the elementary school and have lunch unsupervised with her daughter while you were providing therapeutic visitation services?
I don't recall ever telling her that.
At any point, did you ever put in writing that you felt or you believed that it was okay for Ms. Hubbell to go have unsupervised contact with her daughter?
I didn't see that in my notes anymore.
You didn't see that in your notes, but wouldn't you remember if you told the mother that she can go have unsupervised contact?
I would like to think probably.
Okay. And you can recall that date to be August 20th, 2016. Okay. You're not asking, that is all my questions for this witness.
All right, do you have any further redirect, Ms.?
I do, Your Honor.
All right.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Now, Ms. Mullins, how often did the guardian ad litem reach out to you to find out how these visits were going?
I don't recall us having correspondence or conversation.
she ever send you an email to ask you?
Your Honor, I would object to this line of questioning. This is privileged communication between the guardian ad litem.
She's asking her, was there any?
I will, I will overrule on that objection, however, I will sustain the objection because this is beyond the scope of recross.
Okay.
That, I don't think you cannot bring up stuff that was not asked in cross-examination. When you redirect.
Okay, but you've been asked extensive questions about how everything went and those kinds of things by the guardian ad litem, correct? Is that your first time detailing all that?
Yes.
Okay. Now, ask you probably, I don't know, I think you've been asked probably about 20 questions about that one visit. that
Objection, Your Honor. Either we're going to ask a question or,
Yeah, we're getting there.
Just go ahead and ask the question.
That August 20th visit, but before that, had Dilara displayed any of that level of behavior?
No.
Okay. And would it be safe to say that the first 2 or 3 visits were a little bumpy with Ms. Hubbell? About what you're setting the boundaries and she's learning, you guys are learning each other, is that fair?
Yes.
So, tell the court, after the 3rd visit, and you laid those boundaries down for her, were they respected?
Yes.
And did you feel like she was benefiting from your guidance on interacting with the law?
Yes.
To your knowledge, did she have any legal representation or advice? Did she have a lawyer?
objection, Your Honor, relevance?
What would be the relevance of that one?
That Ms. Hubbell at that time didn't have anyone other than Ms. Mullins to give her the kind of guidance that we're talking about. She provided her.
I'm gonna sustain that one.
So let me just ask you this, these communications, were they just strictly between you and Ms. Hubbell? No other third parties for you to reach out to and say, help me support here? I mean, was it, as far as you knew, was it just you setting that guidance down?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Goodare, other than setting the visit or reporting something that ran off the rails, so to speak, is under your therapeutic visitation guidelines. Let me just ask you this, does your company provide you with some general guidelines for people who are receiving therapeutic visitation? How to watch them, keep your eyes on them, make sure things are appropriate, those kinds of things. Does your company give you some guidelines, something to, these are the way
No.
you are to, they send you out?
Well, I mean, it's, I don't wanna minimize it, but, I mean, it was just basic knowledge of supervised visitation. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to sit there and monitor them, watch some conversations, appropriate interaction, make sure they're not doing anything. So, I mean, those basic guidelines, yes.
Right, okay, so nothing inappropriate,
Right.
don't be talking, and you knew, I'm gonna ask you, did you know that Mr. Goodare was the primary residential parent throughout this time?
Yes.
And would you communicate to him where you felt like Ms. Hubbell was in the process? Would that be appropriate when you got toward the end there, the last visits?
Yes.
And this has been over a year, correct?
Yes.
Like 15, 16 months at least?
Yes.
And some of these questions, did you communicate, did you do this, did you do that? Is it possible those things happen and you don't have a recollection?
That is possible, yes.
But you don't have any doubt that you told the primary residential parent what you felt like Ms. Hubbell had done to complete the recommendations that she have 8 weeks, 8 times supervised visitation. 8 weeks of supervised visitation at 2 hours per week, generally.
You know, I'm object to the compound question.
It was compound.
Let me ask, do you have any doubt or that on your recollection that you communicated to Mr. Gadare where Ms. Hubbell was at the end of the visitation?
From what I can recall, I did mention it.
And he wasn't happy and asked that you be replaced. Was that your
Yes.
recollection?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to ask you you've been asked about these phone calls and stuff. Would you describe those as a tiny handful of very brief ones, lengthy conversations? How would you characterize any phone calls that you might have received during these visits?
Some may have been a little lengthy, some were short and to the point, but I try to keep focus on the actual visit.
And do you recall Dilara and Ms. Hubbell doing activities that involved reading to each other? Dilara reading a book, Ms. Hubbell reading a book?
Yes.
And could some of those calls have been during that reading time?
I can't remember, I don't recall, I don't.
Did you stay within earshot, which was your directions?
Yes.
Would that be accurate?
Yes.
Did never let them go off where they could have had a lengthy conversation about something inappropriate out of your ear range?
No.
Okay. And you don't have any doubt that you not only told Mr. Gadare where Ms. Hubbell was, in your opinion, but you told Ms. Hubbell where you felt she was, correct?
Yes.
Do you feel like, how would you characterize the progress she made from those first 2 or 3 bumpy ones to the end of your time with her?
I thought she did very well, very receptive to the feedback, willing to do different things and not just stay in this one little tiny bubble. And, enjoyed the time that she was spending with Dilara and just, wanted more.
Okay, and would it be fair to say that it's kind of an awkward, unnatural situation for a parent to be in? To go from parenting a child, often in their own home.
You want to object, this is speculation, Ron.
Once you've been there.
Not in the role,
I think
of a
that-
parent she hasn't, Your Honor.
Well,
Yeah,
no,
I'm
I'm talking about awkward for her to be supervising people who have at some time parented their child in their own home.
Your Honor, and I would object to, again, that she's not a licensed clinical psychologist or a therapist to provide any expert opinion in this matter, Your Honor.
I'll sustain that objection.
I'm not asking you for an expert opinion, but I'm gonna ask you this, is it from your view, is it somewhat awkward?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the lack of capacity. Her capacity as a therapeutic visitation worker to provide supervised
You have to
visitation.
be a psychologist to say that it's awkward to be in a therapeutic visitation situation when you've been a parent? That's almost rhetorical. I will move on and withdraw it.
Okay.
All right, so if the order says that the mother will not be allowed unsupervised visitations until she has completed at least 2 months of therapeutic visitations and until the agency facilitating the therapeutic visitations determines that the mother is ready for unsupervised visitations, would that fall within something that you would have assumed going into this?
Your Honor,
because
objection. It
she
calls for her to
has
make a legal
time?
conclusion, Your Honor. She's not an
Her
attorney.
state of mind, I'm asking her what,
I'll let her answer if she can.
could that be, could you, as the visitation supervisor, interpret that to have been a completed requirement for Ms. Hubbell?
Yes.
Okay. And completed it to the supervisor's, satisfaction?
Yes.
And And that if she is enjoined from making any disparaging remarks about father to the child in the presence of the child and from encouraging others to do so, is that not the very behavior that you addressed with her and she corrected?
Yes.
And just to bottom line that, that one visit, I mean, that one upsetting situation, you observed the interaction from the time Mr. Goodair told Dilara where she was gonna be going after that visit ended, to the time you dropped her off and she had that meltdown right outside your truck.
Your Honor, I object to the compound question again.
I think it was compound.
Did you observe Dilara at the beginning of that visit, her interaction with her father?
Yes.
Did you observe her, that all the way through until the end when she had the meltdown? Is there any question in your mind that the meltdown and the upset and the outburst occurred over what the father told her was gonna happen after the visit?
Yes.
Is there any doubt in your mind?
No, I'm sorry, no, there's no doubt.
That's what happened?
Yes, that's what I believe to happen, because while she was at the visit, she was fine, no indication that she was even thinking about the visit ending or where she was gonna go, and then when it was time to go, that's when she started, displaying those behaviors.
All right. And other than that, were there any other visit that she had these outrageous behaviors that you described as occurring on August 20th, 2016?
No.
And the one time she had them, you talked to both parents and told them, correct?
Correct.
And is there any question that whatever guidelines they tell you, whoever they tell you to report to, or whatever else you were supposed to do, you more likely than not did that? And is there email communication, phone calls, other things around these supervised visitations that are not verbatim in these little summaries?
Yeah.
Your little summaries. Is that what they are? Aren't they just little summaries hitting the highlights of the visits?
For the most part, yes.
Are they every single detail of anybody you ever communicated with or passed along information to, or anything that happened in those little summaries, or are there other things going on? You letting DCS know, for example.
I'm sure that there's points where I didn't get in my notes that probably should be.
Okay. I mean, isn't everybody that documents behaviors guilty of leaving a thing or two
Objection,
out?
Your Honor, that calls for speculation.
I was the same.
Okay, I mean, have you, let me ask you this, how many years were you with DCS prior to that?
3.
Okay, so prior to Camelot, you were with DCS for 3 years.
Yes.
You have a degree in psychology.
Yes.
You were a visitation supervisor with Camelot.
Yes.
Have you worked in a professional capacity with children for at least 4 years?
Longer than that.
How long?
We want to tell my age, but at least 25 years.
Okay. All right. Do you have any trouble discerning what is appropriate and what is inappropriate parental interaction?
No.
When you get to the bottom of this, talking about court orders and all these different things, isn't that really what you were there to do, to make sure the visits went smoothly, that Ms. Hubbell was appropriate and Dilara enjoyed the visit?
Yes.
No.
All right, anything else, Mr. Frakes?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Mack, anything further? No? All right. Thank you, Ms. Mullins. You are free to leave. We appreciate your testimony. All right, we're about time for a lunch break, so we'll break until about 1 o'clock.
Your Honor, may I ask, does
yes,
the
sir.
court know how long we will be going today? Do we have until?
4:30 is, to make sure I'm.
And, Your Honor, I did serve that motion last week, asking about Dr. Kaplan. I would like a ruling before the day's out on when and how we could get him in.
Have you all received a copy of the motion?
We received a copy of the motion, Your Honor. Obviously, my client objects to him being introduced as an expert due to the fact that it's only by phone. I understand cross-examination by phone. My client would prefer. He's never met the child. We know that for a fact. We don't have any basis to determine that he's ever interviewed the mother.
So,
I think those are questions you can raise on what are, but he's definitely an expert. We filed his curriculum data.
Here's what happened,
not
Judge.
definitely an expert until he's found an expert by the court, and that.
And that's right,
Okay.
and that would be based on his curriculum vitae and his testimony. And let me just say this real quickly about Dr.
Whoa.
Kaplan.
Let me ask this: are you all? I'm just asking: are y'all prepared to argue the motion today or tonight? Are you all prepared to go forward and argue? She has filed a motion to hear, I guess, electronic evidence. Are you all prepared to argue this motion today?
I don't believe we'll get to the motion, Your Honor, if I continue putting it on proof today. I'm going to call the mother as an adverse witness next, and we won't finish with her today.
And can I just want to explain to the court what happened. Here's what happened. I served him last time we were here, and then when I got ready to run my other one down, the clerk was closing and we couldn't find it in time. So we just brought it with us today. So it's filed today and served last time in court, which is kind of unusual. I've never done that before. But they've had notice of it for a couple of weeks. We'd at least like our opportunity to argue the motion and set a time for him to be able to testify. His limitations, be noted by the court.
My only issue is if he's on the COR, I mean, if they
And
hadn't,
I'll modify that.
then it hasn't been amended. And so, again, we have an issue, Your Honor, where this court had to give guidance on who the child could even see. And now we have someone who's saying that they saw my client's records, that no one has agreed to this person reviewing her records. So we have a big issue at this point of someone doing something over and above without the permission or leave of the court to do so.
I'm not even sure what that.
All right, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to hear the motion first when we get back from lunch. We're actually not coming back to lunch. I forgot I do have to make an appearance at a meeting at 1 o'clock, so we'll be back from lunch at 1:15. I will make it 1:20. I will hear the motion as to whether or not to hear this witness electronically. I will take all arguments as to whether or not this witness who's not on the certificate of readiness and at the beginning of the trial, whether that could be altered, amended, all of that, I will take up when we get back, and then we'll start the mother's testimony at 1:30.
All
So you're saying we have 10 minutes to argue that motion?
Well, if it goes a little longer, I'll take a little longer. But I think I could hear what you got to say in 10 minutes.
I think I just said it.
You did just say it. So I can hear that again in 10 minutes when we come
Yes,
back.
ma'am.
All right, so we'll start back about 1:20. All right, we'll be in recess. You all can leave your stuff we will lock the room.